I'm sure Kyle knows that Purdy's a little more aggressive by nature. If Ricky Pearsall is at full health and goes this week, he does have vertical ability, more so than any other receiver that they put out there now. If they do get into those favorable down and distance situations, maybe Kyle with Brock and Pearsall could be a little more aggressive.
I don't know if you've heard any of Kyle Shanahan's press gathering. Did you?
I did not. What did he say?
Well, let me play a couple for you. This is about Brock Purdy.
I think each week it's gotten better, with last week being the best. I mean, each week has been different. So if he takes a big step forward this week, like he did last week, he should have a good chance to play.
Good chance to play. He asked if this was a hard decision.
No, it's not a hard decision. It's just more about Brock's health. I mean, it's been awesome how Max played. He's been great. But we got a lot of confidence in Brock, and we know Brock will play at a high level too as long as he's healthy.
And then this is on Ricky Pearsall.
I mean, they told me he's healthy, so I'll see today from my own eyes when he practices, and I'm sure it'll look that way. And as long as he does, then he's good to go.
Okay, so, Greg, this sounds like there's at least a decent shot at Brock Purdy and Ricky Pearsall coming back to this offense. How do you think it changes the Niners?
Well, it's funny you say that because they still haven't been able to run the ball with any consistency.
Yeah.
See, they're really a sustaining offense. Think of it this way. Because they don't get a lot of big plays in the pass game, and certainly without Pearsall, without Ayuk, they don't get a lot of big plays in the pass game. For instance, the longest pass play was 22 yards, and that came at the end of the first half. So they don't really get big plays in the pass game for the most part. So if you're not going to get that, you need your run game to be sustaining. So in an ideal world, Purdy, who I think is a little more of an aggressive thrower than Mac Jones, we'll see if he pushes it down the field. Obviously, it depends on the play calls, too. I'm sure Kyle knows that Purdy's a little more aggressive by nature. If Ricky Pearsall is at full health and goes this week, he does have vertical ability, more so than any other receiver that they put out there now. So ideally, you'll at least have some shots down the field. If you hit one or two of them, obviously those can be game changers. But right now, their offense is very condensed, which I think makes Mac Jones's numbers a little deceptive. He's played very, very well for what he is. But, I mean, he was 33 for 39. Like I said, the longest pass play was 22 yards. There's no real verticality to their offense, to their pass game.
And he's been accurate, though, which has allowed them to put up some points. I want to ask you more about the ground game, particularly Brian Robinson Jr. What did you see from not only his efforts, but the play designs and how they might have been different from the Christian McCaffrey runs?
I don't know if they're that different. I mean, they ran an outside run where he was able to get to the edge. They still run outside runs with McCaffrey. The one that he had, I guess, a 13-yard run, if memory serves me correctly, he was able to get to the edge cleanly. But he's a kind of a physical, grinded-out runner. He had a couple of runs in this game, but for the most part, they've not really run the ball particularly well, and that's really killed them for most of the season because they have to be able to do that.
Well, Greg, let's actually spotlight one particular run, and I want to get your thoughts on it because you know how fans are. If you go for it on 4th and 1 and you don't get it, we should just go on like straight up the middle. Just sneak that thing. Don't do a stretch play. What did you see on that play? Was there a breakdown? And is that, I'm going to ask you, Greg, is that sort of in general a riskier way to go about 4th down?
Yeah, I don't get into that, guys, about play calls because
come on, Greg.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you what happened
criticism.
on the play. I'll tell you about what happened on the play.
Please do.
What happened is Young, the outside backer for the Rams, he played off tight end Farrell's block and he tackled McCaffrey. But what struck me about the play was this. Given the way Kittle pushed Young outside with his initial help on that block, it made me think, was the play actually designed to go inside of Farrell and not and not outside? That was my thought watching the play. But because if Kittle is going to push Young to the outside, then it didn't make sense to me for the play to go outside where Kittle was pushing him. So that made me think that maybe the play was supposed to go inside of Farrell and outside of Kittle. But it didn't work out that way, and obviously he got tackled for no gain.
And at that point, already down 21-0. It was kind of a fait accompli, if I may borrow from the French. I want to ask you, Greg, about the use of the blitz by Robert Saleh. I don't know if it was absolutely the most all year, but it seemed to me like they brought a lot, and yet Matt Stafford just kind of flicked it away.
Yeah, they did not have great success. They rushed 5 or more on 18 of Stafford's 37 dropbacks. That's almost 50%. Stafford was 12 for 18 for 147 yards and all 4 touchdowns. But it does tell you that Saleh clearly felt that his 4-man D-line pass rush could not generate the needed pressure. The Rams now have become a totally different team from any other team you're going to play in the league because they play with 3 tight ends on a ridiculous number of snaps. They played 30 snaps in the game with 3 tight ends. No team in the league does that. Actually, I think 33 snaps maybe. But the point is they play with 3 tight ends, and that changes the way you play defense.
Before we get off of the Niners pass rush, because as you know, Greg, this is kind of where the Niner fan stress lies right now. What do you see there? Is there any room for optimism going forward? I know they're playing a future Hall of Fame quarterback, and that won't be the case for the next handful of weeks, but that's where people wanted an acquisition, didn't get one. What are you seeing from the current horses that they've got?
Yeah, it's going to become opponent-specific, guys. They don't have a great pass rushers up front as individual players right now, with Bosa out, with the idea that Mikael Williams would have developed, as the season progressed, and now he's lost half a season. So they don't, you can't make these guys into great pass rushers, but then it depends on the opponent. They're going to play Arizona this week. Arizona does not have a great O-line. So it's very possible that someone like Bryce Huff, if he lines up on the left side of the defense and he goes against Jonah Williams, that he could certainly beat Jonah Williams because Jonah Williams is not a very good pass protector. So it's going to become team specific and quarterback specific. Jacoby Brissett does have a tendency at times to get stuck in the pocket. It's one reason why he's never become a full-time starter in the league, because he does have traits and talent, but he just, for whatever reason, maybe he doesn't see it clearly enough at times, but he tends to get stuck in the pocket, which makes him more susceptible to sacks. But they're not, these guys are not all of a sudden going to have a magic wand, over them, and they're going to become great pass rushers. That's not going to happen.
Yeah, it'd be cool if it did, but tied for last in sacks with 12 with Baltimore and Jacksonville. But I wonder about the weapons that they're going to face. Trey McBride, we know, is amazing, but they won't have Zay Jones. They won't have Harrison Jr. What else can Arizona do to make the Niners' defense uncomfortable?
Well, they don't have great play, with Harrison out, and he's been up and down, quite frankly. He's it's funny how some things happen to guys. In college, he never dropped balls. In the NFL, he's dropping balls. It's funny how that works. I can't explain that kind of thing. But the point is, he's still a quality receiver, and he's not going to be there with the appendectomy. So, they have Wilson. They have McBride. McBride is the guy you've really got to deal with because he's really the number one target, and he lines up all over the formation. And Wilson can be a solid player, but he's not a number one. So they don't really have great weapons, and they don't have a great back, obviously. So they don't bring a lot to the table as far as skilled position players. But it's still an NFL team and an NFL game. And, I'm sure fans are thinking, oh, they play Arizona, they're not very good, particularly with the game they just had where it was 35-0, or I think early in the second quarter to Seattle. So they're probably thinking, we should just beat them badly. And who knows? Maybe they do. But, the way the Niners have played with their offense this year and the inability to sustain a run game on a weekly basis, they don't strike me as a team where you feel that they're going to go and beat a team badly. They just don't have that feel. Now, maybe this is the week that it happens. That's the thing about this league. I mean, just think back, the best team in the league's Buffalo, blah, blah, blah. Now all of a sudden people are thinking Buffalo's done and they're not even going to make the playoffs. It's just a week to week. These are pointless conversations to me, but that's the way people talk about it.
I'm wondering about the Arizona front seven, Greg, because at times they can get after the quarterback, and it seems like they're inconsistent against the run. Is this a game where the Niner run game can reestablish itself against Arizona?
Well, look, you know that they try every single week because that's what they have to try to do, quite frankly. I mean, look, they didn't play very well against the run last week. Now, that was an odd game, but the point is that that was a game where the Seahawks ran the ball close to 50 times for almost 200 yards and controlled the ball for almost 34 minutes. So, Darnold only had 13 dropbacks in the game against them because that's the way the game played out. But the point is the Seahawks had not run the ball with any kind of consistency either until that game. So, I think the Niners are going to look at that front group and believe that they can run the ball with efficiency and success, and therefore volume, because they want to have volume in the run game. That's really what they want. Now, obviously, you need production to have volume, but they want, at the end of a game, and I don't know if some coaches think like this. I don't know if Kyle Shanahan does, but some coaches, have numbers where they say, hey, we want to have 32 runs and we want to have, 27 drop back. Some coaches think like that. I don't know if the Niners do, but I would bet that in this game, they would feel that they want to have 35, running plays.
Greg, I wonder if a Niner fan came up to you and said, okay, that game against the Rams, because we know the offensive line is getting healthier, but
yes,
when they say, okay, we didn't run the ball well, but also we dropped back 39 times and there were no sacks. Did the offensive line play well? How would you answer that?
Well, yeah, I would say it's a combination of the offensive line and the fact that Jones gets rid of the ball. That's his game. He's not a guy that holds the ball in the pocket. The pass game is not built on those kinds of plays. That's also one reason they don't, push the ball downfield. They don't necessarily have the receivers right now who've played the last number of weeks, but Jones is a rhythm player. The ball comes out. That was the same conversation the Rams had. I remember when they played the Rams, and that's the game the Niners won late on a field goal, if I'm not mistaken. That was a game where the Rams afterwards were talking about the fact that, man, we couldn't get to Jones because the ball came out. And that's the way Jones plays. So it's a combination of both. It's a combination that the O-line, was pretty, because I made it a point in particular to watch Trent Williams, who I just enjoy watching because he's so good. But he had no problem with Verse or Young, whoever lined up over him. But the ball was out. That's the way Jones plays. He's not a sit in the pocket kind of guy. He's not a sit on his back foot and wait for late in the down and drive the ball down the field. That's not the kind of quarterback he is.
If Brock Purdy does play, I mean, you sort of touched on this a little bit earlier, but
yeah,
downfield throws, obviously he does hold the ball longer than Mac. There's the mobility aspect.
Yeah.
How would you put into words the passing game change that happens if Brock plays?
Well, Brock's a little more aggressive. I don't know. Again, now you get into the Ricky Pearsall element as well, because if Ricky Pearsall plays, he does have some vertical ability. While he's not a true burner, he does have some vertical ability. So you might see some different route concepts and combinations called by Kyle Shanahan for that reason. But Brock, just by nature, tends to be a little more aggressive. He does have the mobility element. I think there's a little bit of in his DNA, a little more of an innate sense of try to make bigger plays at times. So we'll see how that plays out. And every once in a while when you do that, you might make a bad throw. But I think just by nature, he's a little more aggressive with his mindset in how he goes about playing the position. So I don't know how that impacts how Kyle is going to call the game. Now, obviously, we're talking about normal down and distance situations where you can be proactive as a play caller. I'm not talking about 3rd and 9, where defenses more often than not have a tactical advantage. But when it's 1st and 10 or 2nd and 4, of course, I haven't been in many 2nd and 4s because of the run game. But if they do get into those favorable down and distance situations, maybe Kyle with Brock and Pearsall could be a little more aggressive.